Hello folks, and welcome along to a short video where I'm going to run through the steps for modeling this Lego brick part. So as we discussed in class, the basic steps that I'm going to follow here are I'm going to model the rectangular brick first, then I'm going to model one of the cylindrical studs followed by the writing, and then we'll create a pattern feature to pattern that in two directions, and finally we'll model the internal studs on the part. Okay, so what I might do is before I start actually modeling the part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my I'll set up my variables. So I'm going to go up to the menu at the top, go across to tools, and I'll go down to equations here. So I'm going to create three global variables. I'm going to create one called x. I'm going to let the initial value for x equal to 2. I'm going to add a new global variable called y and set the initial value for that equal to 4. And I'm going to add another global variable called z and set the initial value for that equal to 3. Okay, so when it comes to dimensioning my model, then I can just refer back to these initial variables. So remember, these represent the number of Lego units, so that the block is going to be 2 Lego units in the horizontal, 4 Lego units in the vertical, and then 3 in depth. Okay, so I'll OK that, and you should see this tab then appear here for my this category in the feature tree appear for my x, y, and z variables. Okay, so I'll start the modeling of the block here on the top plane. I'm going to create a new extruded boss base feature that automatically creates a sketch for me, sketch 1. And the sketch is simply going to be a rectangle starting from the origin and going up and across. So when dimensioning this part here, then I'm going to right mouse button and up to get my dimension tool. Rather than dimensioning this as 16 millimeters, what I'm going to do is create an equation, say equals x, and then click on this preview for my global variable x. You can see that puts in the x in inverted commas for me. So that equals to x multiplied by the spacing for one of those Lego units, which is 8 millimeters. So this will be x multiplied by 8, where x initially has a value of 2 Lego units. So 2 by 8 will give me a 16. Okay, and you'll see then that's a calculated value of 16. I'll do the same here for my vertical, and my dimension here I'm going to put in an equation equals y. Click on that global variable y and multiplied by 8. So this now should be 4 multiplied by 8, should calculate out to 32 millimeters. Okay, so that's the sketch complete for the rectangular block feature. So if I OK that, and I'm going to extrude that up by a certain height now. So the height of this thing, the height of one Lego unit will be about 3.2 millimeters. But what I want is I want this to be essentially 3 Lego units tall, or 9.6. But rather than typing in 9.6, I'm going to again put in an equation here. So I'm going to start at the sketch plane. I'm going to go blind by a certain distance. But the height here again is going to be a calculation. So it'll be equals to z, which has an initial value of 3, multiplied by the height spacing, which is 3.2. So 3 multiplied by 3.2 should calculate out to 9.6. And if I OK that, we should be able to see, if I click on the part here somewhere, we have a calculated height here of 9.6. Okay, so that's the geometry for the block done. Now if I come along later and I modify these variables, if I make x 4, the width of this block will become 32, etc. If I make z 1, the height of the block will change to 3.2, and so on. Okay, so that's the initial rectangular block. The next step is I'm going to hollow out the underneath of the block. So I'm going to use a shell command, which you'll find in the Features tab over towards the right near your fillet and chamfer. You'll find the shell command here. So the shell, what the shell will do is it'll hollow out the part here and leave a certain wall thickness. So in this field here, if I type in a wall thickness of 1.5 and highlight the bottom face of the part here. Okay, and I can look at a preview of what that's going to do. That's going to hollow out the block, leaving a constant wall thickness of 1.5 millimeters all around. Okay, so that's that hollowed out there now. So what I can do now is I'm going to create a new feature. I'm going to create a single stud on the top surface of the block, and I want that stud to be tangent to the internal wall, so that if you were to fit two of these blocks together, the top stud on one block would fit exactly with the internal walls on the block that it's mating to. So to do that, I'm going to change my display style up here. So at the top of your working area, you have these drop-down menus. This one here for display style. The standard is this shaded with edges, but another one that's quite useful sometimes is the hidden lines visible view. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a new extrusion feature on the top surface of the block. So that's creating a new sketch for me, sketch 2, where the origin is down here in this bottom left hand corner of the block. I'm going to draw this stud closest to the in the corner closest to the origin. The reason for that is that, let's say if I reduce my global variables here down to 1 by 1, there'll only be one stud left, and it'll be this one here in the corner. Okay, if I was to pick this corner up here, I might wind up with some issues there. So I'm going to pick the bottom left hand corner, the one closest to the origin for that initial stud. Okay, so I'm going to rotate my view so I'm looking straight in at the plan at the top of that block, and I'm going to sketch my cylindrical stud here. So I'll create a circle here, or I could use right mouse button and drag to the right. So I'll just drop in a circle roughly the right size here, and then I'll use my tangent relations. So click on the circle, control and click on this hidden line here, and make a tangent relation there. I'll do the same thing again, click on the circle, control and click on the hidden line, and add another tangent relation. So between those two relations, that means that the circle, whatever size the circle is, it's always going to stay tangent to both of those edges. The last thing I need then is a dimension of 5 millimeters diameter on that. Okay, and you see now that that is fully defined. So I can close out of that sketch and extrude that stud up by a height of that's a height of 1.6. Okay, and that's done. I'm going to change my display style back to the standard shaded with edges view. Okay, so that's a single stud. The next thing I'll do is I'll do the text, the embossed text on the top of this here. So I'm going to create another extrusion feature on the top surface of the stud this time. And that's created another sketch for me, sketch 3. So another way of looking straight in at that is to right click on the sketch over here and look in normal 2. Okay, so what I want now is I want to create a guideline for that text. So I'm going to create I can use a center line, or I can use a line and make it a construction line. Probably the easiest thing is just to use a center line across here. So I'm going to go from one quadrant of the circle and then go coincident with another quadrant of the circle over here. So that line now is anchored to the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock positions on the circle, if you like. Alright, so I want to take this line here and offset it by a distance of 1 millimeter down below here. So in my sketch tools up at the top, we have this tool called the offset entities. So it'll take a sketch entity and move it by a certain distance. So I want to offset that line down by 1 millimeter, and that'll create a line parallel 1 millimeter below. If you wanted to, you could change the direction of that, but this is fine where it is. Okay, now what that's done is it's created a line, but it's created a solid line 1 millimeter below the initial line here. So I'm going to select that line and turn it from a solid line into a construction line. So there's a checkbox over here in the options on the left hand side. Check that box and it turns from a solid line into a construction line. So this line won't form part of the geometry and it won't get extruded with the lettering when that's finished. Okay. Now, so what I want to do is I want to create some text with this this offset line down here as the guide curve for the text. So in the sketch tools up at the top, we have a tool here called sketch text, or just text. So sketch text here, it's looking for a curve to act as a guide curve for the text. So I'm going to pick the lower line here, and by default it'll use the whatever document font is set up for this drawing or for this model. I'm going to turn that off and manually select the type of font I want. So I want a Century Gothic text. I want the text to have a height of 2 millimeters, and I want the text to be centered and the text to have a width factor of 50%. Okay, and now in this text box here I can type in my text. Okay, and that is more or less done now. I think I have it centered. Now it doesn't come up as fully defined, but that in this case here that's okay. I'm going to OK that, and that is my sketch now done for the text. So I'll accept the changes to that sketch, and I'm going to extrude that up by a height of 0.1 millimeters. And OK. So that just leaves me with some slightly raised or embossed lettering. Okay, so I'm going to finish up the video at that. I'll continue it on in a future video where I look at creating the linear pattern feature and modeling the rest, the internal stud and patterning that. Okay, thanks.